Tonight, we get a sneak peek at the Regina Food Bank's new community food hub. Once open, it will be Canada's first free grocery store. Also, researchers in Saskatoon think they've found a solution to help wine grapes withstand winter cold and spring frost. Plus, the Riders have trimmed their roster with sights set on their first regular season game.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Monday, the 3rd of June, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thank you for watching. Saskatoon police are investigating the city's 10th homicide of the year. Officers were called here to the 800 block of 22nd Street West early this morning. That's where they say they found a 29-year-old man who'd been stabbed. He was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead. No word yet on any charges. Saskatoon had a total of 12 homicides in all of last year. Meanwhile, Regina police are investigating that city's second homicide of 2024. At 6:30 Saturday morning, police and paramedics were called to the 2300 block of Reynolds Street. The report was of an injured man. He was taken to hospital where he died. Police say his family has been notified, but no other information has been released. It's been 2 years since Epic Alliance shut down. The Saskatoon real estate investment company left a mess in its wake. Investors lost millions of dollars and hundreds of homes were left in limbo. So what's happened since? Dan Zakreski brings us the story.
Then I went, something is off.
Gary Bush is a Saskatoon realtor. He says the Epic Alliance business model smelled fishy from the first time he came across the company 4 years ago.
I don't know what's going on for sure, but I think there could be some mortgage fraud or there's some manipulation of facts here.
2 years after Bush smelled something off, investors watched this Zoom call with Epic's founders.
Everything's gone. So everything's bankrupt, guys. It's all gone.
Gone, but not forgotten. Epic managed hundreds of houses scattered through Saskatoon's core. It was called the Hassle-Free Landlord Program. It turned out to be anything but. People in BC, Alberta, and Ontario who bought them as investments were suddenly landlords. There were as many stories as investors.
In my situation, we were fortunate that the property was vacant. It had not been damaged by tenants. It was not renovated, but it was rentable.
Rebecca and her teen son came out to work on the house. She's finally selling it this month. Gary Bush says her experience is not unique.
If they got decent tenants, and now because the rents, like in the last year and a half, the rents have dramatically increased. And so they could be at a point where they're actually making some money on these, or at least breaking even. So if they can tolerate it, they might just be keeping them. But for a lot of people, as soon as it got to that break-even point, it was like, we just want out of here.
Gary Bush and Lena Jarabek both wonder whether anyone will be held accountable for what happened. Now, police have investigated, but there's no word yet whether there will be any charges from that investigation. Dan Zakreski, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Imagine walking into a store, picking out your groceries, and not having to worry about an expensive bill at checkout. For clients of the Regina Food Bank, that will soon be a reality. Its community food hub is set to open in downtown this summer, the first of its kind in the country.
This is going to be Canada's first free grocery store. Set to open this summer, it will be for those who regularly rely on the food bank. We know that use has spiked across Canada since the pandemic, and now in Regina, 1 in 8 families are food insecure. And when it comes to children, that number is 1 in 4.
We saw the amount of people we feed over double, and we knew we had to do something. We can't have a healthy, prosperous Regina when 25% of our kids go hungry.
These shelves will soon be lined with products for people to shop from, and instead of just being handed a box with dried and canned goods, they'll be able to pick out fresh produce, meat, dairy, and eggs, a lot of it coming from right here in Saskatchewan.
None of us fit in a box, but that's what we give our clients today. And when you make food choices for people, you actually force them with their limited income to buy the food they actually need or want. The other thing is most of us take for granted when we go to a grocery store the experience maybe with our families of picking and making a meal. When you give choices, you give not just dignity, but actually we figure we can feed about 25% more people at a time when we're already feeding about 16,000 people a month in Regina.
You get to pick and choose rather than them just handing you stuff. Normally I barter with my neighbors and we swap back and forth. So it kind of works out that way, but a lot of people don't do that. So there's a lot of stuff that just goes to waste.
About 5,000 kids will also come here to learn about food, nutrition facts, and financial responsibility, and many of them rely on the food bank for lunches and snacks at their schools.
Our clients are our neighbors. They come from every corner of the city and every walk of life. We're talking about elderly people. 18% of our clients work full-time. We're talking about people that maybe got hurt on the job or maybe have a physical or cognitive disability. We're talking about thousands of children, university students, new Canadians.
And you might not know this, but food banks don't get government funding. They've raised $3.7 million to get this going, and they're aiming for $5 million.
It's everything from kids' piggy banks to our corporate partners, and it takes gifts large and small to pull off a bold national first like this. And so we're asking people to give what they can. It feels good to do something that's a first in Canada, but I think in the end what feels the best is just knowing when people come here, they're going to be met with a smile and they're going to leave with the food they need, and that's awesome.
I mean, every little bit helps. That's why I'm glad the food bank's here. I wouldn't make it.
A secluded site approved by Regina City Council for Indigenous ceremonies will soon help people connect with their history and identity. It's located at the former Kings Park campground, and the green space hasn't been used for more than 30 years. A city administration report said several people from local Indigenous communities had raised a need for a place in the city to hold ceremonies. Piapot First Nation elder Harry Francis was part of the selection process. He says a ceremony was performed at the site before it was chosen.
We proceeded and we had a sweat. And there was quite a number of people that had great interest, and after it was over we had a gathering, a meeting, and we decided, yeah, this is an awesome place. It's almost back to nature. When you're out here, it's back to nature. You know, you don't hear the cars go by, or you don't see anybody walking around, as you can see. And we thought this would be an awesome place to have ceremony.
City Council unanimously approved a 5-year development plan for the location. The site will include 2 teepees and a trailer for washrooms. The first year will be used to learn what's needed to host a sweat lodge and welcome participants. 8 sweats are already scheduled, the first one June 7th. The growing season is underway in vineyards across Canada, but extreme cold weather of recent years has challenged the growth of wine grapes. Now, researchers at the University of Saskatchewan think they found a solution to help with winter cold and spring frost. Ethan Williams explains.
It looks like something out of a science fiction movie, but what's happening in this lab at the University of Saskatchewan is real, and it could change the face of agriculture. Researchers at Abazyne Biotech are creating products from a plant hormone called abscisic acid. The goal? Spray it on wine grape crops to make them withstand cold temperatures. Abscisic acid, or ABA, naturally occurs in plants. It can close a plant's stomata, the tiny pore-like structures on its leaves and stem, but natural ABA doesn't always last a long time in the plant. Abazyne says its spray can outlast natural ABA, not only making grape crops hardy to frigid temperatures, but stopping them from budding too early during midwinter warm spells. Abazyne's chief scientist says results from crops in Ontario have been promising so far.
Those grapevines, when sprayed with a solution of our analog, were able to be 5-6 degrees more tolerant to freezing temperatures.
Jim Wilworth is testing the product on his grapes at Brock University. He says it's timely research given how climate change is impacting the growing season.
We can have very warm temperatures in February and March, and that can lead to premature cold hardiness loss.
The research is beneficial for commercial wine grape growers like Matthias Oppenlander. He's lost many hectares of crop at his vineyard in southern Ontario over the years from cold damage.
if you lose your vineyard, it can cost up to $50,000 to $60,000 an acre to plant a vineyard. So not only that, it takes 3 to 4 years to bring that plant into production again.
Yeah, I can see the buds pushing right there, so they're coming.
It's also encouraging news for Dean Kreutzer, who runs a winery north of Regina. He thinks the prairies could also benefit from the spray, especially since spring frosts can happen into June, hampering the growing season.
In certain situations, this would be critical to keeping your crop, because 1 hour at -1 or -2 and your entire crop is gone for the year.
Right now it is a bit expensive.
Back at Abazine, the next step is taking the product from the lab and selling it commercially, with research showing it could also be used on other fruit crops. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Saskatoon.
As Canada aims to build more homes to get through the housing crisis, there's a push to use a material called mass timber. Some advocates say it's a more eco-friendly option, one that's cheaper and faster to use than concrete or steel. Paula Duhachik has more.
This Edmonton factory is making glue-laminated timber, or glue-lam, a type of mass timber that can replace beams made of steel.
So how's business these days?
Well, business is booming.
So much so, the company is building a new 155,000 square foot factory.
We are filling capacity slots about 10 months out from today. So yes, the phone's ringing off the hook.
A growing interest, but still relatively rare. An RBC report says mass timber accounts for just about 1% of North American building materials, though building codes are changing to allow more of it. Some provinces will allow up to 18 stories, the height of this student residence at the University of British Columbia. Developers like mass timber because it comes together quickly.
For example, our building on 5 here at Ontario and 5th in Vancouver was erected in 12 days.
Proponents say it's also more eco-friendly than concrete and steel.
Wood is the lowest carbon building material available. We're not saying we're eliminating concrete. We're not saying we eliminate steel. We need those things to work in concert with wood to create these safe, affordable, low carbon, net zero buildings.
Still, uptake of mass timber has been uneven across the country, and some builders are reluctant to switch. Plus, some researchers say if we want to protect the environment, the last thing we should do is cut down more trees.
The most valuable thing we can do with forests is to leave them standing and growing.
Environmental debates aside, there are also practical considerations. The pull of doing things the way they've always been done versus a new approach that promises to build homes faster. Paula Duhachik, CBC News, Edmonton.
A little cloudy and cool for it today, but when it warms back up, spray pads are open in Saskatoon, and the first of the outdoor pools, Riversdale, opens on Wednesday. Will it be warm enough to play in the water? Ethan will have your answer after the break. Stay with us.
This weather update is brought to you by Titan Automotive, proud member of the Capital Automotive Group.
Our weather specialist Ethan Williams joins me now. I kind of enjoyed the cooler rainy day.
It was a nice actual day out there. We saw the little bit of those cooler temperatures, and yeah, a nice slow rain for some of us, a little steadier, heavier rain for others as these bands have started making their way through the province. If you're not seeing the rain, you're definitely seeing the cloud cover though through much of south and central at least. Some breaks of sun here and there in the north, and this now follows what has been a very rainy May through the province. In fact, this is the first time in maybe close to 2 years now where all locations, or almost all of them in the province, have had a month where we've had above average moisture. And in the Battlefords, for instance, you had your, in fact, 6th wettest May on record, getting more than double what you normally get in an average May. That meant that meteorological spring, March, April, May, was a little bit above average for moisture as well. The first time in a long time we've seen a season report above average moisture. And there is more on the way as well, because this area of low pressure out in Alberta is going to move closer to Saskatchewan overnight as we get closer to midnight, and that's going to bring some bands of rain through the southeast and east central areas, then spilling its way through much of central Saskatchewan into tomorrow morning. The cold front from this going to bring through some showers and maybe thunderstorms into southern sections tomorrow morning. For Regina and for southeastern sections, we'll actually be kind of in a dry spot tomorrow morning, so might actually see some breaks of sun. But for Saskatoon, I still think we're looking at cloudy and showery conditions. The north gets the rain into tomorrow night and into Wednesday. And yes, once again, as the cooler air wraps in around this, there could be some rain that changes over to some wet snow at times, especially the further north you are. Still Thursday, though, we're looking at cloudy skies, some clearing finally in south and central as we get a little bit closer to the weekend. These amounts going to be hit and miss depending on who gets those kind of heavier pockets here and there, but maybe 5 to 10 millimeters in the southwest. Elsewhere, a good 10 to 20 millimeters, maybe 20 to 30 in the northern grain belt. I think in south end that amount is maybe a little bit on the high side, but still could be some higher precipitation in spots. Then this system begins to move off to the north tomorrow, and that means that we're to the south of this low pressure system, which means the winds start to pick up. Gusts near 80 at times in the southwest. And then as we get into Wednesday, that's when there's a bit more widespread strong wind gusts through south and central, and places like Regina, Weyburn, Moose Jaw could get gusts close to 80. So very gusty next couple of days here. Other than that, Regina, mix of sun and cloud to mostly cloudy skies by the afternoon with a chance of some showers and non-severe thunderstorms. Windy Wednesday, and then finally temperatures start to improve as the sun comes out just in time for the weekend. Saskatoon, I think a more cloud cover and a better chance of showers for you tomorrow. We'll put it at 5 to 10 millimeters with locally heavier amounts, and then very windy, Sam, here these next few days as the sun finally comes our way and we start to dry out.
And then we're going to have to mow lawns.
Yes, isn't that great?
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Well, Edmonton fans are happy. The Oilers are going to the Stanley Cup final. They knocked off Dallas in Game 6 of the Western Conference Final last night. So the Oilers will play the Panthers for the Cup. Puck drops in Game 1 at Saturday night at 6 o'clock our time. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Training camp is done and the Saskatchewan Roughriders have trimmed their roster for the regular season. The cuts included a few veterans, including Regina-born receiver Braden Lenius. He'd appeared in just one game last season dealing with injuries. As for quarterbacks, Mason Fine is out. He was entering what would have been his 4th season with the Green and White. Short yardage QB Antonio Pipkin was also cut. Shea Patterson and Jake Cohn will back up Trevor Harris.
My role is to make sure he's ready to play. And to push him every single week, and to, I think that's whether you're the 2 or 3 or 4, you always want to push the next guy that's ahead of you, because that'll make them that much better. So my job is just to do that and be ready to go.
Shea really set himself above, and that was probably the #1 position we looked at with a magnifying glass, so to speak, and we felt we made the right decision. So certainly, obviously, Mason's a good player, and we wish him all the best moving forward. So those conversations are never easy, but it's necessary in what we do. We're happy with the roster we put together.
While the Green and White get ready for their first regular season game on Saturday, the schedule has changed. With the Edmonton Oilers playing in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final that day, the Elks have bumped up their own game time at Commonwealth Stadium. That means kickoff between the Riders and Elks is at 2 o'clock. Big league pitcher Andrew Albers is back in his home province, making the move from player to coach. Albers signed on to be the pitching coach for the Saskatoon Berries for their inaugural season. Before the Berries, Albers, who's originally from North Battleford, played for the Minnesota Twins, Toronto Blue Jays, and Seattle Mariners. The lefty was also part of the Canadian pitching staff for last year's World Baseball Classic in Arizona. Albers hopes the return of the Western Canadian Major League Baseball to Saskatoon renews a passion for the sport in the Bridge City.
It gives kids especially a chance to come out and watch a baseball game and get to experience that atmosphere and just give them hopefully renew that love of the game, understanding that, maybe they have a chance to play here one day, and maybe that's something that they can aspire to do, and that we have a lot of kids that are now starting to go down to universities in the States and starting to get opportunities there that can compete at this level and get to come back here and play, and hopefully that just makes kids kind of want it that much more and be willing to persevere and work through some of those trials and tribulations and get their opportunity later on down the road.
MLBers will be inducted into the Saskatchewan Baseball Hall of Fame this summer. The Berries did notch their first win Friday night, too. They hit the field again tomorrow in Moose Jaw. And Ethan's back with one last look at your weather.
And there will be rain on the way for Regina. The chance of showers anyway at midnight tonight. Temperature's not going to drop all that much because we got that cloud cover in place. By tomorrow morning, though, we're in the dry slot of that low pressure system, and that means that we'll actually see some clearing skies. But that does not last long. By the noon hour, we are cloudy with some showers and the possibility of what will likely be non-severe thunderstorms, and those winds, again, picking up probably 50, gusting 60 at times. Saskatoon, a cloudier situation for you. I don't think you'll get to see the sun at all tomorrow or tonight. Light rain with a temperature at 13 at midnight, and then continued showers tomorrow morning, or at least a chance of them before we get into the afternoon. Again, showers and possible non-severe thunderstorms once again. Winds a little less breezy, but a temperature only getting into those mid to upper teens, Sam. So another kind of gloomier June day.
All right. Thanks, Ethan.
You're welcome.
And before we go, a Saskatoon teen has made history at the Youth World Weightlifting Championships in Peru. 16-year-old Etta Love lifted roughly 300 pounds over her head in a lift called a clean and jerk, breaking a 20-year-old record and winning gold.
It's a pretty cool experience. I always say that the competitions and events that I get to go to are the reward. They often look like the hard work, but they're really what I get to do after months of training. The clean and jerk is the second event in weightlifting, and it's we lift it from the floor to our shoulders in a squat, and then we stand it up and we lift it overhead. And the type of jerk that I do is a split jerk, so it's kind of like a lunge position with your legs within the bar overhead. When I get to the bar in that moment, I get to lift that. It's not something where I feel like I have to force myself to want it. It's something where I'm like, I did this work to get to earn this attempt. This was my dream as a kid, right? This was the thing that I wanted to do the most, and I get to do that now, and I get the opportunity to do that. And so that's a big part of what keeps me going this year. But also, it's my last year as a youth, and so I'm trying for the youth world records this year. And so those are my more maybe practical goals for the rest of the year.
Incredible. That is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/Sask. You can subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel or download the CBC News app on your phone or tablet. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.